Friends. Let me welcome all of you for this virtual book release function of a book written by Professor Mehta. The book is about, it is a kind of my life story, but it's not exactly my life, my professional life story of Professor Mehta. He has worked in NIEPA without leaving for a day, for a single day, for full 40 years, perhaps even more than that. Full 40 years he has worked in NIEPA, starting from very humble position to the very highest position in NIEPA as a professor and head of the Department of Education, Department of Education Management Information System. In fact, in the establishment of this department, Professor Mehta's role was very important. And I wouldn't like to speak anything about his professional life or his contents of his book, because anyway, Professor Mehta would be speaking on that. But let me give a brief introduction of Professor Mehta. Professor Mehta has done statistics, his master's in statistics and also PhD in statistics from Rajasthan University. And he, from the very beginning, he has been working on educational statistics, data and indicators, and how they can be used in education planning, in education forecasting, projections. So the entire his professional career is actually centered around this, whether it could be census data, or it could be some other household service data, or it could be education data, beginning from Education India Volume 1, 2, 3 to the latest U-DISE. So how he has actually very instrumental in actually, though DICE was established by Professor Y.P. Agarwal, but it is during his resign as in charge of DICE that has taken leaps and bounds. And during his period, in fact, DICE has began to cover the whole of nation from 2005-6 onwards. And it is during his time that the DICE started covering secondary and higher secondary education as well. And it is his resign that DICE has even forayed into collecting the data of student-wise data. And during his time, that some kind of effort was made to streamline the database system at school education in terms of creation of certain school records through a committee under the chairmanship of Professor Govinda. During his time, that the very intensively technology was used in both collection, processing, analysis, and dissemination of data. So in any respect, the evaluation of data collection system in India, at least from 2000 onwards, till about 2018 or 17. So Professor Mehta's role is very, very critical, and whoever want to write can't ignore Professor Mehta's role in this evaluation of data collection system, particularly for school education. In fact, Professor Mehta and myself actually started the All India Higher Education Survey also. Now that again is being looked after by MHRD, as now Minister of Education. So in any respect, whether it is higher education or school education, you can't ignore the imprint of Professor Mehta. With these few words, let me welcome Professor Varghese, who is actually chairing the who is actually chairing the session. Let me also welcome Professor Mehta for his own for the release of his own book, and let me also welcome Professor G.D. Sharma, who was earlier with NIEPA as a head of the higher education department, or then higher education unit. He later on went on to become secretary UGC and also director to Center for the UGC affiliated institute. So he is well versed with the work of the Professor Mehta, and therefore we have invited him to speak about Professor Mehta and his book. Basically, his book is nothing about personal life. Essentially, it is a professional life. And let me also welcome Professor Sridhar Srivastava, Joint Director, NCERT, who is also involved in the collection of data in terms of All India School Education Survey. He was previously head of this survey department and also he was involved in the NAS, National Achievement Service, and therefore, as a person, as an individual expertise, he is well aware of the developments, particularly with respect to school education data in various respects, not only about numerical and financial data that was collected in All India School Education Service, but also the achievement data in terms of NAS, the National Achievement Service. And I think this combination, Professor Varghese as the chairperson of this event, and Professor Mehta's book, and also Professor Judy Sharma's and Dr. Srivastava's combination is well suited for this function, for this event. And let me also welcome all the people, and let me welcome all the experts in this to this meeting. Now let me request Professor Varghese to formally release the book by way of it is of course virtual event, but still we have a couple of people. We are sitting here physically, very senior faculty members, Professor Sudhanshu Bhushan, Professor Pranti Panda, Professor A.K. Singh, and also family members of Professor Mehta are also here. And let me welcome I forgot that. Let me also welcome family members of the Professor Mehta and also my faculty members to this small physical event. But COVID has restrained us from going from big event. Let me request Professor Varghese to formally release the book.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be chairing a session and releasing a book which encapsulates the most of the developments that have taken place in terms of evidence-based decision making in this country, for which NIEPA was and I need not have to talk about NIEPA. NIEPA is a person of numbers. Mehta, Arun out of numbers is fish out of water. And he enjoys the data, he enjoys collecting data, he enjoys using data, he enjoys interpreting the data in the most convenient way. And the basis of many of the decisions that were taken, not only at the NIEPA level, at the All India level, were also based on the data that we have collected, that is U-DISE data. And not only in that, the government level.
Okay. No, somebody speaking.
So what you find is that essentially throughout India, throughout the country, you find that U-DISE data are used very systematically and very effectively. Not only that, in NIEPA, we also had a research program promoting use of U-DISE data, and several researches were conducted, not only for collecting data, but also for using the U-DISE data. So it gives me immense pleasure to release something which encapsulates the changes that have taken place and the great contribution that Professor Mehta made, and thereby NIEPA as name is shown in a very good light, So may I take this opportunity to release them. May I request Professor Arun Mehta to have a brief introduction to the contents of the book, please.
Thank you, Professor Varghese, for giving me this opportunity to present the details of my e-book entitled 40 Years of Arun C Mehta at NIEPA. Though it is titled 40 Years of Arun C Mehta, but otherwise it is History of Educational Statistics, Use of Data and Analysis in India. There are large number of articles, mimeographed, published, reports, but I have selected only 27 articles which are presented in 5 sections of this e-book. The first section deals with the educational statistics and educational management information system. Different published articles have been presented here, but the heart of this section is strengthening of educational management information system through U-DISE, which is one of the major achievements of NIEPA so far as strengthening educational management information system is concerned. In the second section deals with indicators of educational development, where 4 papers are presented. Apart from the day-to-day utilization of indicators like gross enrollment ratio, net enrollment ratio, retention rate, transition rate, dropout, promotion, repetition rate, in one of the papers which is presented in this section deals with, can there be alternative indicators, better indicators than the gross enrollment ratio and net enrollment ratio? To me, this particular article is very important, not only to always look into the participation through GER, NER, but there are other ways of looking into the participation of children in general and school education in particular. The third chapter deals with the demographic and enrollment projections. I still remember that in the ground floor, there was some party going on where there Dr. Vaidyanathan Iyer, he called me. I frightened. I was very small, junior lecturer. What happened? So he said that Secretary Education, Mr. Giri, wants to meet me. To me? Yes, he has seen your paper published in Journal of Education Planning and Administration on enrollment projection. So following the discussion with him, a World Bank project was undertaken, given to me on enrollment projections, state-wise enrollment projections. So in the third chapter, we present the demographic, in the third section, demographic and enrollment projections. This section also presents a module on enrollment and teacher projections, edited in 1994 by none other than Professor N.V. Varghese. This is the only set of modules which are available. After DPEP, we have Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan program, and now we have Samagra Shiksha. But unfortunately, the set of modules, 12 set of modules on district education planning is the only modules which are available, which are very handy and useful and widely being used at that time by the district as well as the state level officers. In the fourth section, data analysis and education planning, 5 papers have been presented. Again, in this paper, in this section, perhaps you must be knowing that I got an opportunity to visit Bangkok in 1987 for 3 months. There, as an intern, I developed a paper about the relationship between education and development indicators. That particular paper was later on published in the Silver Jubilee issue of the Journal of Education Planning and Administration. Perhaps Professor Varghese must be remembering that that was edited by the special editor, Professor Brahma Prakash. So, and this section also presents a brief analysis of upper primary education in India, which was jointly undertaken with Professor Varghese, and that was the basis of scaling up the district primary education program to the entire elementary level of education in the form of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program in the year 2001. In the fifth section, that is devoted on to education for all. 7 papers have been presented in this particular section. I have been writing extensively on upper primary level of education, upper primary level of education. Later on, I also have written, contributed something on secondary level of education. So in this section, a paper on universal secondary education, can it be achieved in the near future? A detailed analysis was presented. But the first of these 7 articles, The first was on Education for All in India, Myth and Reality. That was perhaps published in 1994, first major article published in the Journal of Education and Social Change. And that time, it is located in the Institute of Education, Pune. At that time, Professor Dr. G.D. Sharma was the director of Indian Institute of Public Administration, Pune. He has given me this opportunity. Institute of Education, I'm sorry, Institute of Education, Pune. So that was a big opportunity, and that encouraged me to write more and more. Following this particular article, many more articles were published. So this is very brief about the 5 sections, and these 5 sections are followed by annexures. One is the complete list of my contribution, you can see later, and in the second annexure, publications brought out based on the U-DISE data. I am happy to report you that a total of 131 publications were brought out during 2002 to 2017 January, and this particular document, ebook, presents the list of all these documents along with the link. You just click the link, it will take you to that particular publication. So this is very brief about the book. I would like to say that the issues which I have been raising for so many years over last 4 decades, they are also relevant now. The efficiency of education system, the quality of education, the high dropout rate, the low transition rate, participation is very low, it is still relevant. The dropout rate at the secondary, higher secondary level is very high. The participation rate in terms of GER at secondary, higher secondary level is very low. Though at that time, in early 80s, we were not having data. We were planning at the state level or at the country level. Only state-wise data was available. That too 7 to 8 with the time lag of 7 to 8 years. But now with the efforts of NIEPA, the time lag has come down to up to the 2017-18. It was brought down to 1 year from 7 to 8 years. But now again, one can see that data gap in education statistics is time lag is again increasing. 2022-23 school education plans across the country are now based on the data of 2020-21. So whatever we have achieved, slowly but surely, we are one by one, we are losing many of these achievements. The dissemination at NIEPA, we have given topmost priority to dissemination, and 1 year data, on the basis of the 1 year data, we used to bring out 15 publications. Most of these publications or all of these publications are now discontinued. Otherwise, they were found very useful by the researchers, not from the India, but from across the country, across the world. One of the most important contributions of NIEPA was making available a school report card, individual school report card in case of 1.5 million school. That is available from the year 2005-6 to 2017-18 at schoolreportcards.in, our website, NIEPA website. But unfortunately, thereafter 17-18, this school report cards are nowhere available at one single point. We have always encouraged researchers to collect the unit-wise, school-wise data, and we have a large list of users, something around 10,000 users from across the world. They downloaded our data, but now there is a dissemination policy, data sharing policy, which encourages to discourage utilization of data, which is just opposite which we have followed previously. Lastly, I would like to say that of late, we now have School Education Quality Index, Performance Grading Index, Health Index, Sustainable SDG, Sustainable Development Goals Index. But at the ground level, generally our officers, those who are engaged in school education planning, under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan previously or Samagra Shiksha right now, they are not aware about all these indexes. And these indices are available for 2019-20 when we are in the 2023. No district-wise indicators are available. No district-wise or the annual targets are available. In view of which, now we think that focus must be given on to how to utilize all these indices so that meaningful interventions can be made out of the various indices which have been in the public domain right now. I would also like to say that now, because of the National Education Policy 2020, the school structure itself has been changed changed to the foundation stage, consisting of 5 years from age 3 to 7 years, preparatory phase of 3 years, middle school 3 years, secondary education 3 years. And now the time has come that we should re-look into the indicators, the meaning of universalization in view of the changes in the school structure. We may like to re-look into and compute a few new indicators which can give us where do we stand so far the school education is concerned. Lastly, I would like to say that this particular volume, apart from the foreword, which is written none other than Professor Kuldeep Mathur, our former director of NIEPA. I am grateful to Professor Mathur for having for writing this foreword. Not only the foreword is written, but my former colleagues at NIEPA, Professor Marmar Mukhopadhyay, Professor Pradeep Kumar Joshi, who is the chairman of the UPSC right now, Professor G.D. Sharma, Professor Najma Akhtar, currently Vice-Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, Professor late Professor B.P. Khandelwal Sahab, Sri Baldev Mahajan, Dr. Geeta Kingdon, Simon Ellis from UNESCO Institute of Statistics, and Professor R. Govinda. They all have reflected on my research work. I am grateful to all my former colleagues and NIEPA faculty staff, members with whom I have worked over almost 4 decades. I am thankful to all of them. And lastly, I would thank Mr. Arun Joshi, who has prepared the layout, designed the layout of the ebook, and Srija Biju for developing the cover page of this particular book. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I am thankful and obliged. You have agreed to my suggestions to release this particular book on today. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Mehta, for giving a detailed introduction to the contents of this book. And it is also important to see that we separate the individuals from what it contains as the content. Thank you very much for focusing this on the themes that you have covered, and also touching upon the evolution of the demand for data and information in the process of development when we prepare the developmental plans. Thank you very much for that. May I request Professor G.D. Sharma to make a brief remark?
Thank you very much, Professor Varghese.
You can be slightly.
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you fully. If you can be slightly. Yes, now it is better. Very good.
I am here. I am visible. Are you? I am not visible there.
No, we can see you, but only thing is that we cannot see you full.
Okay. Let me congratulate Mr. Mehta, Dr. Mehta, for bringing out an account of his work for last 40 years in NIEPA, and he has really mentioned several things he has done during this period. There are very few people who take this self-accounting of what they have done in the organization. Well, I have not seen many of the studies or many of the academic biography like this. He has written that what he has done during last 40 years in NIEPA. He was consistently working on various issues which are assigned to him as a professor in NIEPA. He was quite consistent and regular. That is one of the point which I observed during my stay in NIEPA and observing his working there. Many good studies were brought out during this period, particular data pertaining to schools and quality of schools, other related aspects of the. He has consistently worked on the very important issues with regard to school education, data on the school education, statistics on the school education, analyzed them properly and made it available for the policy input at the governmental level or at any organization level. I once again congratulate NIEPA, particularly allowing him to publish a kind of work which he done during last 40 years, and that has contributed a great deal to the field of knowledge or educational statistics, and it will go a long way in terms of helping those who are engaged in research, those who are engaged in policy analysis of the school development in the country. His concern was very right that for last several years the data are not getting that much importance which should have been getting, but that is to be expressed and rightly expressed about it. I am always feeling that Mehta has already contributed a great deal in this field, and he must be congratulated. One very important point which I noticed that nobody gives the self-accounting for what he has done in his. Many of us have not done that way. So it is a good. People might talk it something self-congratulating, but that's not self-congratulating. But it is basically that one is saying that I'm accountable to the organization and the society, what kind of work I've done for last 40 years in the NIEPA, and therefore I'm placing my contribution for the general understanding as well general the appreciation of the work which he has done. I once again appreciate and congratulate him, and Dr. Varghese particularly, releasing the book which he has published, and all the colleagues in NIPA. Wonderful his stay in the NIPA and contribution in this. Thank you so much for giving opportunity. I had come for another meeting. I never realized that there is going to be conflict on this aspect, and therefore I try to open it now, and I opened it once again. Congratulating Dr. Mehta and also NIPA for releasing his contribution to the larger audience of our education system. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sharma ji. Thank you very much for your kind words, nice words, and also reflecting on some of the important dimensions of Professor Mehta's contribution to the academic field. May I request Professor Sridhar Srivastava to make his comments?
A very good afternoon to you all. First of all, I thank Professor Varghese, Vice-Chancellor NIEPA, for giving me this opportunity to say something on this August occasion of release of this book by Professor Arun C Mehta. You know, the name Arun C Mehta go in synonym, educational management information system. And the first section that when he was mentioning, so I was becoming nostalgic. Then when I joined NCERT in 2001, and then with the advent of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and we were just knowing about DICE and all, and then we came to know about the name Arun C Mehta, and thereafter I have seen Professor Mehta very closely. I, being a person of statistics and working for the All India School Education Survey, and DICE at that time, which later became U-DISE. So we were having a very close relation as well as association also. But one thing I found in Professor Arun C Mehta that I always cherish, and I tell to everybody that he is very candid in his expression, and he has no hesitation, and we have been improving a lot on his advice, and at the same time I feel that he will also listen to what we as a sister organization, at least in my personal capacity, I can say that whatever we used to converse or discuss, he always paid an ear to that. Now, coming to the section that Professor Mehta has compiled, it is a very, very, I would say, mammoth task that he embarked upon, and he has come to this conclusion, and he is ready with his ebook. All the 5 sections which he was mentioning, the first about the historical account of educational management information system, I'm sure he must have dwelled upon and touched upon the All India School Education Survey also on that, because he has, in many of his papers, I am privy to those readings of many of his papers. He mentions about All India School Education Survey. And then one more important and very important section that he is mentioning, and I know personally that Professor NIEPA has done a lot of work in the area of indicators and projection. And as he was mentioning about one of his papers where he questions about G or NER to be a sufficient indicator for measuring the participation, he has been very evolving in his work that I have very closely observed. The area of projection, I recall one of the projects that I undertook here in NCERT, I got immense help from Professor Mehta. As a person, I have got immense help in that, and he is very expressive in his views and suggestions. So this exercise, I feel that at the present moment, when we have national education policy before us, and we are moving towards I would say a level which is even lower than the state level figures, and in fact DICE had been giving the district level figures, but now the planning framework also tries and includes the district level interventions, evidence based interventions. So for that reason, I am very happy that all those young persons who will be joining the fraternity of educational planning or use of data, evidence-based planning, interventions, for them it will be a very, very wonderful compilation at one place. And then we are coming to know that with the click of a mouse, you can get the paper and other details. It will be a very, very interesting and resourceful piece of work by Professor Arun C Mehta. I personally wish all the best wishes and all the best of health and further more work or such initiative by Professor Arun C Mehta. And I'm very happy for this occasion. And I'm also very happy personally that I have been given this opportunity to speak about Professor Mehta. And I'm very happy for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Srivastava, for linking both your personal experience and the benefits that you derived from the data set that Professor Mehta had generated, and he was managing it. Thank you very much for this. Friends, I am given 10 minutes. I do not know what exactly, why should I speak after two eminent speakers like Professor Sharma ji and also Professor Srivastava ji spoke. Anyway, let me take 10 minutes on some of the issues. Today we are staying in a post-truth scenario. I'm not talking about India, I'm talking about globally. And if you see that 2016, ever since Trump became the president of United States, normally we read about post-truth era or post-data era, that you talk about, we have deviated substantially from this, So that is one part we have reached here. But I would like to say that India, ever since India adopted a planning framework for its development, economic and social development in the 1950s, India was one of the few countries, developing countries, newly independent countries, who made a serious effort to create a data set, information-based decision making. If you see the first 5-year plans, the architect of the first 5-year plan, that is, you will find that Professor K.N. Raj and Pidambar Pant is considered to be the father of statistics, not educational statistics, the statistics in this country. And you will find that Ravi Matai, who was an economic minister for economics, was the person who felt that there is a need for institutionalizing the collection and use of data. And that is how NCERT came into existence, So you have that. When you come to education, and also the second 5-year plan, especially when you're talking about Mahalanobis and K. Raj, etc., these were the people who tried to make use of the data for economic and social development. That made a lot of difference. And when we come to education, the surveys and data started with the 1956 when NCERT started its first survey. And every 5 years, NCERT used to do a bring survey. That was the first instance we started knowing about where schools are located, where schools are to be provided. That's a great contribution that NCERT tried to do in the 1950s and in the 1960s. And why I'm saying 1960s is that in the 1970s, NCERT started another set of survey of educational research by M.B. Butch. There was a series of surveys that were conducted. That was also another survey or providing information for decision making in the process of education. And I should say that this nowadays NCERT is not conducting that survey. NCERT is conducting perhaps NAS survey rather than the facility survey that it used to conduct. But that surveys certainly helped a lot in terms of planning education, in finding the locations of educational institutions at that point of time. It was in 1989-90 that NIEPA initiated a process by which NIEPA said that state should not be the unit for educational planning. It should be the district. And district emerged because our slogan at that point of time, which is valid even today, there are educationally backward districts even in educationally advanced states, and there are educationally advanced districts even in an educationally backward states. So the decision-making process should move away from the state. Till that time, what was known as educationally backward states, non-educationally backward states, most of the decisions were centered around that, and we moved away from that to the district level. And NIEPA played a very crucial, important role, perhaps in a way we conceptualized that, From that time onwards, the information base and information system that needs to be propagated and facilitated, we thought that it should be the district, because this was a history of 1986 policy where it was stated that district boards of education will be created. That was the basis on which the planning should have taken place. But district boards of education did not take place, but NIEPA continued with its efforts towards creating districts as the basis for educational planning. And that is the time in the early 90s that we started talking about district primary education, which Professor Mehta already mentioned about it. And what is important is that this DICE data that you're talking about, which was headed by Professor Mehta for a fairly long period of time, which made substantial contribution. The transition is from PMIS in 92-93 to DICE in 96-97 to U-DISE at a later stage, So this transition is very substantial in terms of expanding its scope, its horizon, and also the use of this data at different levels, So what I feel is that one of the important dimensions of this data set, what is not usually referred to, is that it's a demand-generated data set. To start with, the PMIS was a request that we want to know how the project is progressing, to what extent project activities are carried out, to what extent they are not carried out, etc. And this is an extension. Instead of supply-generated data collection and data provision, it is a demand-generated data collection and provision that you find, and that is why its use is also very substantial. And I am very happy that there is no other person who has handled DICE data for such a long period of time, and there is no other person who has exploited in the positive sense the data the way that Professor Mehta has done, and there is no other person who has published more articles and brought out more publications on the basis of DICE. DICE has become almost inseparable from Professor Mehta, and that is the way Professor Mehta contributed to this. And it was a great honor for NIEPA too in 2012 when this was accepted as the official data source for NIEPA. Friends, I would also like to say that one point which needs to be highlighted, Professor Mehta touched in passing. In 1980s, when we were students and when we were lecturers here and giving lectures educational statistics, etc. There used to be 3 volumes of data that used to come. Education in India Volume 1, Education in India Volume 2, and Education in India Volume 3. The first used to be on institutions and enrollment. Second used to be on the student passing out, etc. Results. And the third one used to be finance. And there is not even a single publication which was not at least 5 years old. And financial data was at least 7 to 8 years old. So India was used to a system in education planning whereby we depend upon only the outdated data. Outdated data was the main source of all our planning purposes in NIEPA. And sorry, not NIEPA, in India, that used to be the pattern. Why I'm making this point is that it's to be highlighted that when we moved to U-DISE, it is most up-to-date data that are available. Today's planning is based on today's data. This is we have traveled miles and miles. We have traveled in our journey to make that. So, and that credibility and credit for that goes to NIEPA, and certainly Professor Y.P. Agarwal, who initiated these data sources, and Professor Mehta, who continued with that. Under his guidance, it has become much larger in size, and also computerization process that has taken place, and the way that data collection and analysis are taking place are substantially important. So therefore, I feel that this contribution is a singular contribution, not only to any particular government agency, but the whole country, and for the whole educational progress and development that we are talking about today. And I am very happy that this is brought together in one place. And also there is references. What is also interesting and exciting is the fact that once you go to read this, I have got an email version of the document, and if you click into the link, you are in a position to get, if we want to know more details, get into that. And this will be a good contribution to be used by many researchers and also policymakers, not only researchers, but also policymakers in the years to come. And I am very happy that NIEPA is instrumental in releasing this book, and we are instrumental in facilitating NIEPA's Professor Mehta's continuation in NIEPA, and all the help and extended by different vice-chancellors and heads of departments at different points of time to ensure that he is coming out with good publications. So this is a publication, most of the things in one place, but he has been at it, he has been writing about it, and his articles becomes a very good source for making informed decisions in education. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I request to Mr. Reddy to propose a note of thanks.
Thank you very much. Let me thank all the participants of this virtual function for their patient hearing and also for making it to this function. Let me thank our invited guest speakers, Professor J.D. Sharma, who was very kind enough to be here in this meeting virtually, though he was occupied with some other meeting. He taken out his time from that meeting and could able to make it convenient to participate in this virtual workshop and give some very comforting words for NIEPA and for Professor Mehta, and we were very thankful to Professor J.D. Sharma. Let me also thank Professor Sridhar Srivastava, who is Joint Director of NCERT, for his long association both with NCERT data sets and also NIEPA data sets, and for his very, very illuminating words about NIEPA data sets. Let me also thank Professor Varghese, who has kindly agreed to hold this function and guided to hold this function, and also spoke about the whole evaluation, how both the socio-economic data sets in India and also education data, how they have evolved over a period of time since the first planning period. And perhaps, though it is very, very, very brief introduction, but it has very, very strong roots in the history of this evaluation of the statistical data system in India. Very, very thankful, sir. And let me also thank all the faculty members and other staff members who are physically present here in this virtual release of the book. And I'm really thankful to all of them, and also Professor Mehta and his family members, his wife and daughter has accompanied him to here. And I also thank all of them for their presence. And